I removed the hair from the cut pieces and then I cut them into smaller parts. Now I start to glue them to the inside of the head. I tried to fill the gap between the skin and the endoskeleton. Once the fleshy layers were built, I started to carve them. It helps a lot to mark the parts that need to be cut away. Now I try to sculpt detail into this vinyl fleshy part. You see here that I'm trying to detail it as much as possible. In order to glue the two parts together now, I mark the lines where the glue needs to go and then I press it all together. I mask off the hair in preparation to use milliput. Milliput is a two-part epoxy clay which can be smoothed before it sets with water, which can give it a really nice surface. I try to seal all the gaps and model in as much detail as I can. I tried to build different skin layers, muscles and fatty tissue. In order to paint everything, I need to apply a base layer of primer to everything that is not vinyl. So I'm masking off everything to then spray can the whole thing. I used the matte white primer, which I applied in 3 or 4 very thin layers, and between each layer I gave the whole thing 5 or 7 minutes to dry, and you can see the buildup. Just give it thin coats and give it enough time to dry. This gave me a really good foundation to apply the color to now. I used the chrome by a company called Molotov. I tested different amounts of color thinner, which did not really make a difference. So I applied the chrome to all parts of the endoskeleton skull, which in the end turned out way too reflective. But I was kind of aware of this, and I knew that the shininess would be knocked down in further steps. To paint the flesh, I started with a red that was something like medium bright. I thinned this red color 1:1 with water, so it would be more of a wash. You can see the palette in the top right to see all the shades and different colors that I mix. Now I start to apply more contrast to the red with lighter and darker patches. To make it more convincing, I painted in subdermal fat and muscles. Once I was somewhat happy with the flesh shading, I needed to attend to the chrome. I started to mix some very dark browns and use them in different washes. I tried to get into every nook and cranny to increase the dimensionality of the chrome or of the metal parts as much as I could. In the beginning, the metal looked way too shiny, but the more I worked on it, the more I toned it down to some cast metal look, which I like way more. Now that the big pieces of the skull was done, or were done, I repeated all the parts that I talked about before to the smaller things, like the cheek and the back of the head. And yeah, so I tried to paint them in the same way and try to make them look uniform to the first parts that I did. I glued everything together, did a little bit of touching up, and that was like when the main part of this of the skull was done. Now I sealed off all the colors and everything that I've done until this point with something that is called an illustration base, which would be the first layer when you do some. But this acts like a clear lacquer layer, and yeah, it protects everything that you've done before. Now, finally it was the time to join everything together permanently. In order to include the glowing eye into the figure, I had to disassemble and then reassemble the whole figure. I wanted to connect the LED in a way that I could turn it on without the puppet being turned on too. This meant to connect it to one circuit and give it its own switch. I extended the leads of the lights so I could run them through the neck into the body. I found a sliding switch that looked toyish enough to fit the overall aesthetic of the build. To make this switch fit, I had to do a whole lot of work on it. Grinding, filing, everything. I had to cut out a rectangular piece in the back of the puppet, and then I had to confirm the switch to the back of the puppet. It was just way more work than I expected it to be. Now I built the electrical connections between the top of the head and the inside of the circuitry of the puppet. After testing everything, I reassembled the puppet. Hot glued the button in place and just made sure that everything is like locked. One thing that was left to do is to insert the lens, like the red lens over the eye, into the build. And there I had to like make a bit of space for it. It was a bit tight. Now, one of the last things I had to take care of was like this massive big hole in the back of the head of my little Termina. I decided to build some kind of a hair bow. This fits the theme of the build. For the original figure had a little turquoise yeah, a little ribbon in the front of its chest, and so I thought it would be like a nice fit to have some like that at the back of her head. Now I just had to stain the dress of my little Termina to like tie it in with the whole build. The only thing left to do now was to build a stand for the figure. I wanted the stand to look like the background which police used, and I think it turned out quite well.